Hello, everyone, and welcome to our cloud coaching session today. We are going to talk about Oracle Enterprise Manager Cloud Cost Control with machine learning. So you will learn how to add the newest capabilities to the new OAM 30.5 release. I am Violeta. Together with me in the call, there is Erika, Rishabh, and Juergen, who will be your presenters for the OAM session. That was all on my side. I would like to invite to the floor Erika, Rishabh.
Hello, everybody. I'm Erika Sciunzi. I'm part of EMEA Observability Specialist team. And I'm here today with my colleagues that will introduce themselves, of course. Hi, Juergen.
Hi, hi, Erika. Hey, I'm Juergen Fleischer, based in Germany. And yeah, I'm product manager from the product management team for all products around management products like Enterprise Manager, Oracle Management Cloud, and now OCI, observability and management. And I will talk later on in the call today around how to set up the bridge between Enterprise Manager and OCI. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Juergen. Rishabh.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rishabh. I'm a domain specialist working on manageability space. I've been working in Oracle for over 5 years in the monitoring tool space and another 4 years working in general operations. We will now look at, in this session further along, we'll go through a short demo where I'll showcase a couple of services to you. Thank you.
We are here with our colleague, with other colleague, Nicole and Michael, that are in the background, but you can see, and that will help us on the Q&A. So please specify the Q&A session, and we will try to answer to them. And eventually, if we have time, we can take something live. Okay? Okay, thank you very much. So let's start. We have like a couple of slides just to introduce the topic. It's actually a really huge topic and is going much behind the Enterprise Manager one. So let me share my slide here. And then we start with our deeper demo session, okay? We are talking today about a specific, let me say, technology trend that is observability, and I think the majority of you know what I'm speaking about. And today I want to show you how Oracle implemented this technology trend inside one of the most famous products, that is Enterprise Manager. We will show you what we are talking about in the live demo rather than slides, so you can really touch the product, and then we will show you how you can touch the product by yourself in the next 2 minutes, okay? And then we end up with the QA and the collateral because there are a lot of live lab, for example. So let's speak about observability. What is observability and why we need observability? Well, observability actually is the ability to get insight from metrics, log, or event that come out from our environment, okay? So you can imagine that in a distributed environment is pretty useful. So monitoring is not enough. We need to extend the capability to prevent issues. So we have to go from a reactivity tool to a proactivity one. How Oracle implement observability concept in OCI? Well, OCI provide a full set of services that is called observability. We already had a former session on all the services, so I'm not gonna to explain them again because it was a former cloud clinic, I think a couple of weeks ago. But today we want to show you how you can use the services to enrich Enterprise Manager capability with some functionality that we will show you today. What is the strategy of Oracle in terms of observability? So he wants to, of course, potentiate his own tool like Enterprise Manager that has a really strong roadmap, and at the same time potentiate also the cloud services. So in this case, we can really show how you can potentiate it, but during the demo, you will see also another product that is called database management that helps you, for example, in case you don't have enterprise manager, you can use database management, okay? But in terms of observability, like logging analytics and operation insight, then you can potentiate both with that. I'm just mentioning it because in case you will see it in the demo and you will wondering what is that, okay? It's an option that you have because, as I say, Oracle offers you the maximum choice. But let's come back to Enterprise Manager. Enterprise Manager, there is the new release, the release 13.5. With a lot of news. All these news are basically organized in three main areas. That's hybrid cloud management, so the ability to monitoring hybrid like on-premise and OCI, or cloud at customer environment, the extendability, so the ability to, for example, send out some alert or some metrics to third-party tool, and one biggest area that is operation automation. In the operation automation, we have an important functionality that is actually take Enterprise Manager as a data lake to apply insight on top of the metrics that are already collected there. Okay, and that's what we want to focus today. What means insight? Insight means capacity plan, forecast, performance degradation. But we will go to show them not in the slide, but rather in the demo side. So let's start with the demo. Let's start to have fun. And the demo is in 3 steps. First of all, we will show you how to set up the bridge in Enterprise Manager to connect with OCI, thanks to Juergen. Then Rishabh will go through the result that you get once that you implemented this configuration. And at the end, I will show you how to start. Okay, so Juergen, I leave you the stage.
Okay, thanks, Erika, for introducing into the topic. And let me share my desktop. Go to the presentation. Okay, so like Erika mentioned, my part will be today to show how to connect Enterprise Manager with OCI. So usually Enterprise Manager is somewhere in your on-premise data center with firewalls around it, and so somehow we have to get data to OCI, and this is the concept we are talking about, a cloud bridge here. So this is a, let's say, an on-premise data center, traditional data center. You have different database hosts there, targets hosts, and this data is transferred using the cloud bridge to OCI. And we are using as mechanism for this the object storage. And so we will declare a bucket. That's where Enterprise Manager is uploading on a regular base data into these buckets or multiple buckets. Different, for example, we can use one bucket for different services like logging analytics, operations insight, and we have a warehouse. But you can, of course, create multiple buckets, multiple bridges. So anyhow, so this is about from here, the different services, they are picking up the data from the object storage. And so that's how the data gets continuously into the services. So this is setting up. So what I will demo right now is a one-time action. So it's done at the beginning to set up the bridge, and then the data flows automatically from Enterprise Manager to and the targets to the to OCI. Okay, let me go to the next slide. Oops. So here are the steps which I will walk through, and some prereqs for this. So we need to have a OCI user, and usually this should be an not a real user. So you should create a user like OEM, and then let's say if it's a development instance, it's a production instance. So the name should be clear. that it's the enterprise manager. It's used only by the enterprise manager. It does not need a password. It must have the right permissions to upload data to object storage, and we will create an API key pair, an RSA key pair for this user, and that's the key which will allow then to an enterprise manager to access OCI and put all the data into the object storage. So we need connectivity between the OMS, target host, and the object storage URL. So there's just a single URL we are using, an HTTPS protocol on default port 443. You can have, of course, a direct connection, or a proxy is possible. The to enterprise manager needs to have full access to the, or let's say, first we will create a credential which is containing the API key, and then, and this is what I've done already set up. I will go through it. We need preferred host credentials, and this is enterprise manager needs to submit jobs to the agent so that the agents will upload all the data from the individual database host to OCI then, and that's why we need preferred host credentials. And an enterprise manager group, which is containing all the targets, the host targets, database targets, operations inside will provide services on and insights on host utilizations and not just database ones. The same is for logging analytics. You have host logs, database logs. So these are the prereqs. And okay, so we will start later on with the named credentials, which we will create. As a gotcha, you will see later on that you have to provide the private key as a long string, but I will show it later on in the demo. And then this is later on, and again, I will show it in the demo, how you will set up the bridge. Here's where you find it in the menu. And again, overall architecture, again, the systems, databases, they need to send the data from the individual database host, and either using a proxy, you can set up a proxy on the enterprise manager, or you can use a corporate proxy and then you send it over via REST API on port 443 to stuff. Furthermore, for the logging analytics service, and Rishabh will show both service operations inside and logging analytics later on. So the bridge will ensure that all the target properties you have in Enterprise Manager from the OMR will get copied over to OCI and will be used to create entities in logging analytics. And what is very important, all the relationships between the different targets, database hosts, listeners, cluster associations, and ASM listener, all the relationships between the different components will get copied over. This means you have in logging analytics later on a topology view of your stuff from OEM. You do not have to create all those associations, and then all those, let's say for the database, all the connection strings to connect to the database, all the properties will be part of it, which will make later on easy to collect logs from it. To collect the logs, additional management agents will get needed to install it on the target host to upload the logs. So the enterprise manager agent is not able to upload the logs. So with that said, let me switch to my guide I created. So the first step I will do is create the keys, and so we use standard key to create the private key, and then we use a private key to create the public key. The public key needs to get then added to this user, which I mentioned before. So let me check. Okay, so from here, so this is the OCI. I've already logged in. So from there, we will go down to identity, users, and you will see I have created already a user OEM prod. Again, that's what I mentioned. You should not use a real user. It should be a kind of user dedicated for the cloud bridge. And here we will select, and again, you have to ensure this user has the right permissions. Here we will add the API key, and I will choose the public key we just created. Important here is, after adding it, you should copy the configuration file preview stuff here. Let me copy it over to my Scratch sheet here. So because in the next step, you will use this information. So now again, this is done in OCI. Now let's switch me back to my enterprise manager, and I got kicked out. So here we will go first to security named credentials. And from here, create credential name, OCI, it shows it already. Credential type is Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Credential, there's just one single type. Important here, we select a global scope, not just for one single target. And here, that's now where we have to provide those details I just saved here. Tenancy ID. Then I have the user ID. And the fingerprint. Goes here. Okay, now what I mentioned before, let me go back to we have to upload the private key, but at the moment there's no way to just pick it up from here. Instead of this, and you can see I have the command already here, we have to create out of the private key, which is a PEM file, so you have multiple lines. We have to convert the line breaks into \n characters, as you can see it here. So I will copy this one here and put it here again as long as I have not used a private key phrase. So that's all, and let's save this. Okay, now we have our credentials. Next step is to create the cloud bridge from here. For this, I'm going again to set up, and then you can see at the bottom here cloud bridge. And I select manage OCI connectivity. Here, I just created this one. The base URL, it's the object storage URL. And again, this is the only user. Of course, you have to ensure that you pick the right region of your tenant. So that's this is the only URL we are accessing. So if you have to open firewall or this URL in the firewall, so that's the only one. And again, on default, HTTPS port 443. So here, the bucket name, and again, let me go to storage, object storage buckets. I have created already upfront 2 buckets. Again, you can use one single one, or they can be in actually different compartments as well. So depending on the needs of the services, if you have maybe dedicated stuff for log analytics in different compartments, so they don't have to be in one. So you can use one or a different one. I will use demo operations inside. So let me copy it from here. And let me check, run a test to validate, and test is successful. So now let's click on create to create it. And it was successful. So this means we have now our bridge. Let me click on OK. Now I can enable data export. Okay, takes a while. Looks like it has not yet populated. So let me refresh this one. So give it a second in the back end. Okay. So we have capacity planning in SQL warehouse. Source is the target group. And again, I created a group upfront containing database and host targets. And then that's the one. So I have only one bridge. So I will select this bridge. And then I will submit the job. Here it remembers you that you need to have preferred host credentials. And that's all. So it will now, a backend job is running to set up the stuff. It will create scheduled jobs to upload the data. Let me see if it is now still running. Okay, now it has already, and looks like that it has already submitted export. So you can later on see here, you will pick the stuff here and you have more details here. So these are the jobs and you will see them enterprise manager jobs as well listed there. So they will run on a schedule, on a regular schedule, and will be responsible to submit the data to the object storage. Now, again, having said this, the final step is now data is coming. I don't think that we have already stuff here. Let me see. No, it's not yet. Data is not yet has not yet arrived here. But anyhow, what I can demo, and this is independent if we have already data there. So again, I mentioned in the beginning, our product management team is responsible for observability and management products. And this is where we have here logging for logging analytics administration. Let me go first to logging analytics. You have under administration and bridges. That's where you create a bridge by demo bridge, and again you pick the bucket, demo logging analytics operations inside. So you pick the bucket which should be used, so where we are picking up the data, and then you just create from here the bridge. So that's all. And then we are picking up the data, we have everything. Let me cancel this. And the same is for observability and management, for operations inside, administration. It's the same here. This is a bridge, create bridge. And again, you give it demo bridge, and you choose the bucket, and that's all to create the bridge. And this will then ensure that the data is flowing into OCI. So that's all. So you set up the bridge first from enterprise manager side, ensure that data gets copied over to the object storage buckets, and then from the services you will set up those bridge. And I think this is all I wanted to show, because now Rishabh will show you all the glorious stuff you can do then later on with the data which we are uploading. So let me stop from here, or let me just switch back to the presentation. I just want to mention that I will soon publish a blog about more details. For example, I didn't mention about proxy details, so there are some more details, but it makes more sense to put this into a blog article. So you will find all our blog articles for all the other products, Enterprise Manager, but the new services under this URL. And now let me stop and hand over to Rishabh. Thanks.
Thank you, Juergen. Now that we have seen how we control the data flow from your enterprise manager into observability, we will very quickly see what valuable insights we achieve from these two services, the operations insight and the logging analytics, and get valuable insights out of them. So Operations Insight is one of the services within observability. This service provides deep and meaningful insights into your operations. The primary features here are the capacity planning and the warehousing. In terms of capacity planning, we can analyze the resource usages. We can see the trends for the databases and the hosts, and can also forecast the resource usage in months and weeks to come. So this gives us a good idea of the impending issues that would come in the future. For example, now we are coming through a holiday period where for many of the customers, this will be a peak period in terms of user traffic, and that will put a huge load on the existing resources. Operations Insight can tell you in advance when the database or the host would get heavily loaded or run out of resources, all thanks to various machine learning algorithms that work in the background. This advanced insight not only keeps us alert on the resource usages, but also help us with the budgeting and potentially avoiding downtimes due to resource shortages. In terms of the warehousing, the SQL warehouse is a long-term warehouse storing details of all your SQL queries from all your databases in one place. This allows you to perform historical analysis on these queries as the need arises. But more importantly, the service out of the box tells you which of these queries are degrading in nature, highly inefficient, highly variable, or have too many frequent plan changes, things that could impact the performance of these queries. Similarly, it also provides warehousing for the other parts in OCI. For example, we have the warehousing for our accelerator resources, for the enterprise manager telemetry, and it also acts as a long-term AWR snapshot hub. We talked about logging analytics as well, which is a very powerful service which can ingest any kind of readable logs from across your IT infrastructure. And it provides valuable insights through analytics and dashboarding methods. Oracle can ingest over 250 different kinds of logs out of the box. And if there are any custom or proprietary logs that you want to monitor, it can be done from the UI itself in a matter of minutes. The Log Explorer provides various visualization methods that help in providing insights out of the raw data that have been collected. Further, if you're stuck in a P1 or a P2 scenario where time is of essence, we can take help of the machine learning to find out the probable root causes in a matter of few clicks. This service also serves as a long-term log retention for low cost that would help provide historical analytics over the past months and years. Now we will continue to the demo. I will share my browser. Just one moment. So here we have the Oracle Cloud homepage. On the top left here, this is the main menu, or the hamburger menu as we call it. Over here, we see observability and management, under which we have the services, logging analytics, and operations insight. Let us go to operations insight first. So here I have selected the relevant compartment. I have selected the correct region where my data lies. And now here we can see that we have 55 databases, 7 hosts. And now on the left-hand side, we see further insights into these. So in terms of capacity planning, so you see here, we have capacity planning for the databases, and then we have capacity planning for the hosts. For databases, these are the metrics over which we see the insights. And again, for hosts, there are a couple of them, which we will see in a few moments. In terms of databases, as you can see, we are looking at the time range of last 30 days. And we can see here in the first part where we see different type of databases by the platform. Some of them are external PDB, some of them are ADW, ATP, and so on. If you want to view them by version, whether you want to view by telemetry, we can filter them out this way. For the CPU, we see here, for example, So in this case, for CPU, we have almost negative 5.26%. So that's a decrease in usage of CPU, overall aggregate CPU over the last month. In storage, an increase in 30%. For memory, an increase in 44%. And IO is negligible, almost the same. And then we come to the CPU insights. So on the left-hand side, we see the CPU insights, the storage insights, the memory insights. So these are the three main ones. We'll discuss this in a few moments. On the right-hand side, we see the trends of the CPU, and then we see the top CPU consumers based on these metrics that you select. Similarly, you see the trends for the storage and the top consumers for storage, and then again for memory and the trends for the memory. This gives you a very quick insight into how these resources have been performing in the given selected period. What's more important is the insights that we see here. So currently, it tells us that out of the 54 databases that we have here, 5 of the databases are currently highly utilized. So the CPU usages are above 75%. In this case, 14 of the databases are underutilized, which is less than 25%. Now, in a real scenario, we would like to have an optimal utilization. We don't want highly utilized systems, neither do we want underutilized systems. In this case, we see this is the true insight which helps us with the capacity planning, because it tells us in the next 1 month, 11 of my databases will reach a state of high utilization. 16 of them will turn out to be underutilized. So we click on this to see more info. Now it opens a new page where we see more insights into these. So these are the database display names. We see the types of databases, the current average active CPU usages, how much total CPU has been allocated, in this case 64 CPUs, the current utilization, which is around 80%, and in the given period, which is last 30 days, we see there's a change of almost 49% increase. If we look down here, this is the trend. So left to this vertical line, this is the actual trend based on the metrics we have selected. And we see the average active CPU. And to the right, it shows us a calculated trend, which tells us automatically that on this particular day, which is November 17, our database is likely going to overcome the threshold, which is the 64 CPUs. So as of now, it's somewhere around 54, but on this day, it will cross that threshold. So we know that this is the approximate date on which it is going to consume more than what is allocated. Now, being a manager, being an architect, your resource guy, anyone, you have this advanced information and you can allocate extra CPU so that the system doesn't stop, doesn't slow down, and your application doesn't fail. Now, if you select the machine learning, this further takes into account the seasonality. Since it stores metrics for a long time, depending on the seasonality, it is able to predict further how the trend will be. And this is the confidence channel that these resources will be somewhere along this line. Now, this gives us a very quick insight into how the systems will behave. Now, similarly, we have similar insights for your storages. So you can see you will have similar insights for the storages, for memory, IO, and then when it comes to the hosts, we have similarly for the CPU and the memory. These are the important ones that we consider. So you will have similar insights where the utilization says that 7 of my hosts will be underutilized, and it will provide a graph similarly, and we can perform capacity planning in advance, thereby preventing any kind of resource problems, preventing possible downtimes, and of course, it helps us in advanced budgeting as well. Now, if you have Exadata, then in that case, let me select the appropriate compartment showing Exadata. So for Exadata systems, we see similar insights. In this case, you see this is a quarter rack, and it has already breached the utilization levels in terms of CPU. For this one, another quarter rack, we see that in the next 16 days, the CPU will get breached. If you want to take a look into the details, further clicking inside, it shows you in terms of the visualization, which are the components of your Exadata, And then you can further see the metrics by the database, by the host, and by the storage server itself. And you see these kind of useful insights in advance. Now, coming back to operations insight again, on the main menu, we have these warehouses. Now, let us quickly take a look at the SQL warehouse, which we talked earlier in the presentation. Going back to my compartment for operations insight. So we have 54 databases, as we saw earlier. And for the given time range, we see that so many, around 3,000 SQL queries have been analyzed. Machine learning out of the box tells us 20 of the SQL queries are showing degradation in nature. There are none which are variable, which is very good. We wouldn't want queries to be highly variable. Consistency is the key, of course. In terms of inefficiency, there are 9 inefficient ones. There are some with frequent plan changes. Some of them might require improvement. Some of them have degradation as well as plan changes and so on. In a sense, out of the box, machine learning is showing you which of these queries might impact the performance of your application. So once we click on the inefficiency, because I'm interested in looking at that one, I see that this is grouped by the databases. So under this particular database, we see that this particular selected SQL query is showing a very big change in the response times and the inefficiency. The size denotes the average response times, which is quite big, 16 minutes over here. And then the color coding tells us in terms of percentage, the inefficiency of this particular SQL query. So in this case, we see it's almost 89%. That's why it's deep red. We see the trend over the last 7 days. And then if you want to see more insights, we click on this, which opens a summary page showing more performance stats for this particular SQL query. Now here we see the performance trends. We see the activity. So this particular query was showing to be inefficient. And here we can clearly see that the CPU and the IO levels are consistent, but they are not the reason for the inefficiency. It has a lot of inefficiency bits. Now, inefficient bits could be due to various reasons. We could look at the other services within observability and find out what really is going on. Maybe there are too many plan changes. Maybe there are too many frequent log writer switches. There could be a variety of reasons. In terms of other metrics, we see the response times. We see depending on the breakdown based on the plans, if it is across multiple plans, across multiple databases. If you want to see a comparison, if the SQL query is running on multiple plans, you see these metrics across these selected metrics. Similarly, instead of plan, you can select the databases if the query is running on multiple databases. Now, coming back to Operations Insight main menu again. So we have similar warehousing for your enterprise manager telemetry. We have it for the Exadata metrics as well. And then also for the AWR hub, which is nothing but it's a long-term hub which stores your AWR snapshots into a single space for your historical analysis. Now, together with all of these things that we saw here, we can easily create custom dashboards suiting our needs. They are very easy to create, and the visualization actually helps us to identify the performance and the usages of our system. Now, going beyond Operations Insight, another very, very important service would be the logging analytics, because the logs are the key to any kind of information coming from your resources. In this case, let us change the appropriate regions. I will remove these. And now we are looking at, you see this is star count, which means I'm looking at all the logs. Over the last 60 minutes, let us make it at least 7 days so that it's more interesting. And now we see that this is of the type pie. So there are multiple visualization options. By default, it's showing us a pie chart. And here we see that these are the different kind of logs that are ingested over the last 7 days. If you remember, I said that we can ingest any kind of readable logs from across the systems. Doesn't matter whether it's a network device, whether it's a host, whether it's a database or any other software. So all different kind of logs. And we see how many log records from each of these are being collected over the last 7 days. On the left-hand side, we have the menu, which is where we actually perform various filtering. Now, entity, if you click on this, this is nothing but in terms of enterprise manager, these are the targets. So these are the target names. So these are coming from each of these entities. Probably more useful information would be to select the entity type, which tells me that from which of these entity types. So this is an OCI function, VNC, WebLogic server, database instance. Now, database instance, for example, can have multiple log sources, which we see here. So in terms of database, we could have the database trace logs, we could have the database listener logs, we could have the audit logs, and so on. So these are the entity types, and then each of these entity types may or may not have multiple log sources. So as we said earlier, we provide over 250 types of different parsers, so we can read more than 250 types of different log sources out of the box. Beyond that, creation of additional log sources is very, very simple. Now, let's say we select, let's go to entity type. And from here, just for example, let us select Oracle database instance. Now, when I do that, you notice that the query is automatically changed. So we are not writing the query. Of course, you can. If you're good at query writing, we can change it manually. But most of the things that we do here will be drag and drop or click, which makes it very, very easy for your operations operations resource to use this particular system. So now we see group by log source, and we see that for the entity type Oracle database instance, we have the audit logs, the trace logs, and various other EBS logs that are coming from the database as well. So in this case, what we are going to see is how many different logs or the log trends that we are seeing over the last 7 days. Now you see here that on these particular days, we saw a big trend. Now the trends help us to understand maybe, it's a consistent trend, and on one particular day, you see a huge spike. So maybe it's a genuine case where maybe some kind of background job was running and therefore it created a lot of logs. But at least it's worth mentioning that it needs to take a look, because it could be a genuine case where there was some issue and it was throwing a lot of error logs. So in this case, more or less, it's okay, even though we see that the trending is quite high on these days. If we think that it could be of issue, we could just select these logs, and it will again select your custom time frame and show the logs on these particular dates. And then you can perform additional activities. So over here, we see that there are almost 1.9 million log records. Now, if I'm in a P1 or P2 scenario where time is of essence and I need to find out if there is a problem, so many log records is a big pain. And also, there's no guarantee that your operations resource is a DBA who understands these logs. He might be a middleware guy who's looking into this. So irrespective of who's looking and what the situation is, we use the power of machine learning in such cases where we have something called clustering, which will group together those 1.9 million log records into a smaller quantifiable number, which is we call as clusters. In this case, 1.9 million log records have been grouped together into 367 clusters. 17 of them, the machine learning tells us that these are the potential root causes. 11 of them are outliers, as you can see. And 167 of these clusters are trending in huge numbers that may or may not be issue, but worth looking anyway. The most important ones, of course, would be to look at these potential issues. Now, further, if you want to check, so from what kind of logs we are getting them, you can always see the log sources again from the main filter menu. These are from where we are getting, or even here in the table, you see what kind of logs and the log sources we're getting this from. Now, further, if I want to again filter into a much more smaller manageable number, I want to currently look at only the very high priority logs. So you can see here, this tells me out of the box that these two are possibly the root causes, which are coming from the EBS transaction logs and show high problem priority. So this is how we are able, in a very, very quick manner to identify what's really going wrong. And machine learning helps us to find these issues. Now, let us go back to the database logs. I'm just looking at the Oracle database instance. Now, these are the log records, right? These are the individual log records, and each of these are grouped together as what we call as fields. Now, if there's an OR error, that would be also recorded as a field called error ID. Now, from the database instance over the last 7 days, we have 2.5 million log records. Let me see if there are any OR errors that are coming up. Yes, indeed they are. So what I can do is group by error ID, click on apply, and now we see the trends for these error ID. So you can clearly see that the orange one, so ORA 12012, this is trending almost every day. But so that could be an issue, or else maybe this one, which we just see one log record, maybe that could be more important. It depends what kind of ORA errors they are, but at least you have a short list. You know how they're trending. You know your background, your IT infrastructure, and you can take a look into these issues. Further, let's say I want to take a look into a different visualization method. Maybe I select the word cloud. This shows me, so the bigger the number, the bigger the word, the number of log records are more. As you can see, log records 314 over here. In this case, just one. And more important or interesting one would be to see by labels. So the labels itself, so we are providing some enrichment to the logs, based on which it tells me that out of the 2.5 million log records, some of them have request failed keywords, some of them have checkpoint waits, some of them have log data switches, which could, of course, impact the inefficiency of your database queries. Further, if you want, you can just click on them, and then it will show you more details about what these are. And further, you can filter. So if you want to see from what kind of entity it's coming from the CBDB. So these are the ways where you can filter and manage your logs and perform analytics over them. So all of these, as you saw, nowhere did I actually write the query. Everything is being managed by itself. It's just simple drag and drop operation, and it's very easy and intuitive to use all these visualizations, especially the machine learning features that we have. Now, if you remember that Juergen showed that we had some topology view. So let's see. Let me select maybe this one. I select include independent entities. So EBS demo. Okay, so it's demo EBS. I include the dependent entities. And now you see this view where these are separated by the tier. So this is from the application tier, the middleware tier. If it has something else, it will show that as well. Now, as Juergen mentioned, these associations show you how these components are associated. Further, by the color coding, if these have some problems. So we saw the clustering method right now. So if through cluster method, if they identify some outliers, you can see them by color coding. If you have some problem clusters, again, these will map out. And let's say you want to take a look at the OR core, which is more important to you. I just click on that. It gets selected, and then I can further view what we have. So I just need to clear this query, run, and then we will see the log records coming from here. So this is a way where you can see the entire infrastructure. In this case, that EBS consists of various layers of components. You see them all in one single space. And of course, if you want to take a look at something particular, just click on that. It gets selected into the entity space, and then we are looking at only that particular component. So very powerful way of viewing if there are any problems or issues going on in your application stack. So I finish my demo. If you have any questions, please post it on the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Rishabh. Thank you really much. So let's jump on the last part. We'll take really just 5 minutes to show you how actually start. How to start? Well, first of all, if you have Enterprise Manager, all you need in-house CI tenant, and as we suggest, if you don't have it, you can download the free trial. If you have enterprise managers, just follow up the Juergen step and Juergen configuration, and you will have your environment set up and ready to be used. If you don't have it, you can use the management agent. And you can see the two different architecture. Okay, in both case, you can use Oracle Cloud Operation Inside, Oracle Logging Analytics, and in case of the agent, in case you don't have Enterprise Manager, you can also test database management. But let's say that you, and this is the AUDOC document for installing the agent and enable the different services, okay? But let's say that actually you want to start right now, so in the next 2 minutes, and actually you don't have an enterprise manager, or you don't have access to it, or you don't want to play with your environment that is reasonable, you can actually use our demo environment. You can go here. This is a OCI interface in observability management. In order to activate it, go on Operation Insight. You want to encrypt my disk right now? No. Okay. And then you can do enable demo mode. In the enable demo mode, you need just once the admin prefs to run this policy. Okay, one that you run it, all the user have access to your to the demo environment. So all the user can go here, or you as a normal user without admin briefs, you can go in the operation insight and actually enable the demo mode. By enable the demo mode, you can see you have an environment really close to the one that show you Rishabh, where you can perform some try and you can play with it. Okay, of course, these are fake data from our demo environment. It's not from your environment, but still you will have the look and feel of the product, and you can also have some functionality that we haven't time to show, like Exadata warehouse, so specific for Exadata system dashboard, or SQL Explorer. So you can query actually all your SQL statement, okay, as it were like a database with another SQL statement. Okay, it's a pretty cool functionality that actually you can use. Same for logging analytics. In logging analytics, let's say that you don't have any agent installed, you haven't done any connection with your environment, you can simply go in logging analytics log explorer. Okay, go on log explorer, no other side. Here, this is my real data, but if I want to have more, you won't have any data here, of course. I can just sample log data, and can you see? I have all this data here, and you can play with it and testing, for example, functionality like query data here by command line, or maybe the clustering data that Rishabh showed us before. Okay, so that's how you can start to read it right now. And actually, if you want to do something more complex, we have a plenty set of collateral that you can download and at the end of the video. So thank you really much for joining this session, and see you next time.
If no further questions, then let's stop this call. Thank you all for attending. Thank you, Erika, Rishabh, and Juergen for presenting, and Michael for answering the questions. And we are waiting you on upcoming events. Thank you, and have a great day.